Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The chilly air in the small town of Graystone had a weight to it, thick with secrets that lingered in the shadows. As the sun began its slow descent behind the skeletal branches of barren trees, the last embers of daylight intertwined with the creeping fog that rolled through the streets. Few dared to wander out on this particular evening. The townsfolk had grown wary, their sense of safety frayed in the wake of a chilling disappearance that had cast a pall over their community. The police station, a brick building adorned with peeling paint and flickering lights, stood at the end of Main Street like a sentinel against the gathering gloom. Inside, officers exchanged hushed voices, their faces etched with the tension of unsolved mysteries. The air was tinged with the smell of burnt coffee, mingling with the stale scent of paper files. Walls adorned with pinned photographs and maps bore witness to countless hours of painstaking investigation. In a modest conference room, Detective Rachel Myers stared down at an array of files scattered like relics from a forgotten time. As a seasoned officer with nearly 15 years on the force, she felt the weight of each case, file every photo of the missing girl, notes scrawled in hastily written handwriting. All of it represented a life abruptly disrupted. Amelia Frost, a 16-year-old known for her bright smile and boundless spirit, had vanished 3 weeks prior without a trace. Tonight, as the wind howled outside and shadows crept through the room, Detective Myers was determined to find answers that would free Amelia's family from the unrelenting grip of despair. The victim, Amelia Frost, was the kind of girl who effortlessly lit up a room with her infectious laughter and warm-hearted spirit. Growing up in Graystone, she was adored by both peers and adults alike. Her deep auburn hair and striking hazel eyes often drew compliments, but it was her genuine kindness that made her the heart of her circle. Friends described her as someone who would always lend an ear and go out of her way to help others, whether volunteering at the local shelter or simply being present during tough times. On the day she vanished, Amelia had promised her parents she would attend her friend Natalie's birthday party at the old community center. The evening was supposed to be filled with music, dancing, and the kind of adolescent excitement that had become a hallmark of their friendship. But when Amelia didn't show up, a ripple of anxiety spread among her friends and quickly turned into full-blown panic. A scant few hours later, as night descended, her parents received an unsettling phone call from Natalie's mother. Amelia wasn't just late, she had never arrived. The realization struck like ice water. Amelia had simply vanished into thin air. Panic set in as her parents scrambled to follow every lead, tracing her steps unsuccessfully. That evening, when daylight faded, the Frost family reported their daughter missing, igniting a frantic search that would consume Graystone. Posters featuring Amelia's bright smile began to fill local businesses and community centers, echoing the disbelief that someone could be taken without a trace in their small town. The crime scene. The early hours of the morning were punctuated by the soft murmuring of police radios and the distant sound of rustling underbrush as officers combed the outskirts of Graystone. With daylight breaking over the horizon, a sense of urgency pushed the search deeper into the surrounding woods, where shadows loomed larger than life. Detective Myers had received a tip-off early that day. Someone had reported hearing strange sounds near the abandoned barn, located a mile outside of town, a structure long forgotten. cloaked in layers of ivy and decay. The barn, a remnant of Graystone's once bustling agricultural past, now stood as a testament to neglect and desolation. Thick wooden beams creaked ominously as the detective approached, each step stirring up a mix of anticipation and dread. Inside, shafts of morning light pierced through the gaps in the barn's rotting walls, illuminating dust motes swirling in the cool air. As the detective stepped deeper, she noticed discarded debris littering the floral barrels, rusted tools, and a broken tractor tire half buried in the earth. But it was the faintest hint of something amiss that caught her attention. A pattern in the dirt, a desperate struggle etched into the ground. She bent down to inspect, her heart racing. There, partially hidden beneath the detritus, were strands of auburn hair familiar, haunting. Holding her breath, she reached for her evidence bag, conscious that this barn could hold the key to Amelia's fate. In that moment, the implications of her findings pressed heavily upon her shoulders. Someone had been here. Someone who had taken Amelia Frost away from her forever. As officers began to cordon off the scene, the sense of a grim conclusion loomed. Graystone was no longer merely a backdrop. It had transformed into a repository of hidden truths, and within its heart lay the answer to Amelia's disappearance. The early investigation. With the barn now marked as a crime scene, the urgency of the investigation quickened. Detective Myers convened her team to dissect every avenue, poring over the leads that had flooded in since Amelia's disappearance. The detective's seasoned intuition warned her that time was crucial. Delays could mean vital evidence slipping away, or worse, losing sight of Amelia forever. Officers recycled through the witness accounts, seeking connections that might bind her disappearance to a larger narrative. The local cafe had been bustling during the brief window when Amelia went missing, and everyone remembered her, but no one had seen her leave or venture into the woods. Eyes flickered nervously as the patrons recalled the last moments they'd shared with Amelia. Rachel scrutinized cell phone records and surveillance footage, trying to trace Amelia's movements on that fateful day. It soon became apparent that several townsfolk had crossed paths with her near the coffee shop, drawing the detective's attention to a seemingly benign character. Greg Hargrove, a local handyman with a reputation for being reclusive, quiet, but known to frequent the cafe. The man had an extensive history of odd behavior that left an unsettling shadow on the townspeople. Rachel decided she needed to speak with him, accompanied by Officer Jenna Pierce. As they entered Hargrove's cluttered house, replete with half-finished projects and the lingering scent of motor oil, they were met with the awkwardness that often accompanies confrontation. Hargrove stood at the edge of his disarray, his eyes darting with tension. "Just wanted to ask you some questions about the day Amelia went missing," Rachel stated firmly, but compassionately. Gauging his demeanor, the conversation began, not as an interrogation, but as an exploration of the day when everything changed. The dead ends. Days turned into a blur for Detective Myers as she chased the leads scattered across Graystone like fallen leaves in an autumn gusts. Despite her initial hopes, the investigation drifted into dark waters, with each promising lead dissolving into yet another dead end. The townsfolk's apprehension grew palpable, their whispers weaving through the streets where once laughter echoed. Courtesy of Officer Pierce, the initial interviews with Greg Hargrove provided little more than anxiety-laden denial. His Alibia routine visit to his ailing mother had checked out, And with each moment spent in his disheveled home, the gut instinct Rachel had clung to began to falter. The peculiar man's nervous demeanor, though unsettling, could easily be chalked up to an anxious disposition rather than guilt. As Rachel reviewed the surveillance footage from the cafe again, ferreting for any glimmer of possibility, her eyes strained in concentration. To her frustration, it showed Amelia chatting with her friends, blissfully unaware of the dark trajectory awaiting her. No one had seen her leave, and the foot traffic had been typical for a Friday evening. Desperation gnawed at her resolve. The search teams combing the woods turned up nothing but empty bottles and fading footprints. The local authorities had initiated widespread outreach, with volunteers posting flyers and local news stations broadcasting her likeness across airwaves. Each unsuccessful day stretched thin the hope that had bound the community. After weeks of missteps and revelations that led nowhere, Rachel sat hunched over her desk late one evening, the weight of every unsolved case pressing on her. It was then she noticed a thread, an overlooked mention in the witness statement that referenced a strange figure lurking near the woods. Perhaps the patterns she had missed before were now whispering in her excellent, unwavering insistence. A break in the case. The crisp air of early morning filled the room as Detective Myers sipped her lukewarm coffee, eyeing the papers strewn across her desk like puzzle pieces yearning to connect. After countless sleepless nights weighed down by her heavy thoughts, the unexpected reference from that witness statement resurfaced in her Minda figure shrouded in shadows, near the very woods where Amelia had disappeared. It was time to take a closer look, armed with her notebook and a determination that rekindled the fire within. Rachel ventured back into the bristling underbrush surrounding the abandoned barn, accompanied by Officer Pierce. Each crunch of twigs underfoot stirred the pervasive stillness that thickened with anticipation. As they approached the tree line, she considered the testimonies collected thus far who might have been watching and waiting, eager to strike when the moment was just right. Diverting slightly from the worn path, they scoured the brush, combing through undergrowth that screamed of secret. Suddenly, Rachel's heart quickened as she noticed a cluster of fresh disturbances in the dirt patch, where someone had clearly tread more than once, now overlaid with twigs and leaves, as if someone had attempted to obscure their presence. With fingers trembling, Rachel crouched down, brushing away the debris, revealing a hidden area where the remnants of fabric lay half buried. It was patterned a scarf, much too familiar. Recognizing it instantly, she felt her breath catch. This was Amelia's. The news ignited swift action within the department. The area was roped off as cadaver dogs were deployed to scour the surroundings for more evidence. A wave of anxiety prickled through Rachel, gnawing at the edges of her hope for a resolution. But even in that moment, she held on to the fragile thread of possibilitized shadows they'd stumbled into might yet yield something valuable. Perhaps even point to a lead they had previously overlooked. The community that once felt so far removed from danger now had its eyes fixed tightly on the truth, and Rachel steeled herself to face that truth head on. The suspect. The atmosphere in the Graystone police station buzzed with a renewed sense of urgency following the discovery of Amelia's scarf. Detective Myers, invigorated by the breakthrough, convened her team to discuss their next course of action. Evidence pointed them toward an unsettling possibility. Someone had effectively monitored Amelia's movements. After sifting through their previous interviews, Rachel's mind turned back to Greg Hargrove. The already peculiar handyman's odd behavior seemed increasingly suspect. Long before Amelia's disappearance, she had heard tales whispered among townsfolk about Hargrove's penchant for watching others from the shadows. Those seemingly harmless eccentricities now carried a sinister weight. As Officer Pierce and Detective Myers prepared to confront Hargrove once more, they meticulously reviewed previous statements and conducted a background check. The findings revealed a spotty history marked by strange incidents and complaints regarding trespassing. When they knocked on his door again, it was clear the stakes had dramatically shifted. Hargrove answered with a feigned air of casualness, but there was an evident tremor in his hands, a slight hitch in his breathing that betrayed underlying fear. "What brings you back?" he asked, a smile that never quite reached his eyes flitting across his face. With deliberate calm, Rachel presented the newly uncovered evidence, gauging his reaction. "We found something belonging to Amelia in the woods near the barn scarf. We think you may have seen her there that day." A flicker of turmoil crossed Hargrove's features, and the detective noted how his facade began to crack. "I don't know anything about that," he stammered, wringing his hands in front of him, his facade slipping away. Dropping the congenial tone, Rachel pressed further, her gaze steady. "You claimed you were with your mother that night. There are questions surrounding your timeline." Hargrove's panic flared, and in that momentary lapse, his world crumbled beneath him. As the web of deception began to unravel around him, Rachel felt the enormity of the momentous confrontation could be the turning point in the search for Amelia Frost. The trial. As daylight broke over the small town of Graystone, it illuminated a palpable sense of tension hovering over the courthouse. The trial of Greg Hargrove had finally commenced, drawing a community still reeling from the anguish of Amelia Frost's disappearance into its fold. Family, friends, and strangers piled into the courtroom, their faces a mosaic of hope, anger, and melancholy. Inside, the air was thick-stuffed with unspoken emotions as the prosecutor delivered the opening statements with clarity and conviction. Their case hinged on the evidence gathered in the aftermath of Amelia's disappearance, the circumstantial clues meticulously stitched together over weeks of investigation. For the prosecution, Hargrove was the shape of evil, cloaked in an unsuspecting guise. A man who had drawn close enough to watch, then act. As witnesses began to take the stand, tales of Amelia's vibrant life unfolded, punctuated by the heart-wrenching narratives of her friends and family members. The most gutting moment came when her mother, visibly shaken, spoke of the harrowing days that followed her daughter's disappearance. They had searched for her tirelessly, their hearts fractured by the uncertainty. Each testimony rendered the courtroom atmosphere heavy with raw emotion. Rachel Myers observed intently, the relentless ache of her one goal justice for Amelia carving deeper with every recounting of the girl's laughter, her dreams, and her spirit. The defense attempted to undermine the prosecution's argument, framing Hargrove as a misunderstood eccentric and questioning the reliability of the evidence that seemed too circumstantial to hold water. Yet, the scars in the community were too raw, the fears too palpable for such claims to resonate. On the final day, as the court awaited the jury's decision, a palpable stillness enveloped the room. Detective Myers, hands clasped tightly, felt the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions boiling within her. Would justice truly prevail, or would the shadows of doubt remain cast over their beloved town? The verdict would not only decide Hargrove's fate, but also speak to a community's longing for closure, a desire to reclaim their sense of safety from the clutches of fear. The aftermath. Following the jury's verdict, The shadows of Graystone began to lift, but the road toward healing was fraught with emotion. The courtroom echoed with mixed reactions on that fateful day. Some rejoiced at Hargrove's conviction, while others simply mourned the loss of Amelia Frost. While justice had been served, it felt like a hollow victory. The girl who had brightened countless lives was still missing, forever out of reach. In the weeks that followed, the community rallied together, a gesture of solidarity, fueled by collective grief and resilience. Vigils were held, where candles flickered like stars against the night, illuminating the faces of those who remembered Amelia, not just as a victim, but as a luminous spirit that touched their lives. Stories were shared, her laughter, her kindness, the little moments that defined her essence, serving as a healing balm over the town's deep wounds. Detective Myers, still haunted by the unresolved nature of Amelia's fate, found herself drawn to the memories of a girl whose life had been abruptly cut short. The transparency of her determination inspired local groups to form, dedicated to improving safety measures and expanding outreach programs in the wake of tragedy. Grief transformed into action, igniting the desire to ensure that no other family would endure what the Frosts endured. Yet the lingering tension of unresolved questions echoed in Rachel's mind. What had truly happened in those woods? And where was Amelia? As she closely examined the evidence once again, new patterns began to emerge, pieces of a haunting puzzle beckoning her to dive deeper. The heartache of Amelia's absence and the trauma inflicted upon the town remained palpable. Graystone was forever marked by loss, yet it emerged uniting a community, bound by the enduring memory of a girl who had lived with a passion that would never be forgotten. The yearning for closure lingered, propelling Rachel forward on a quest for the truth. Relentless pursuit, ignited by love and hope for healing. Reflection. As the sun dipped behind the horizon in Graystone, an ethereal stillness enveloped the town, reflected in the amber glow of streetlights flickering to life. Detective Rachel Myers sat on the edge of her bed, reviewing the details of the case that had gripped her heart for months. Files sprawled across her desk, filled with notes, photographs, and flurries of emotions she had poured into them each day. The investigative journey had been tumultuous, weaving through fear, anguish, hope, and an enduring quest for answers. With Amelia's story lingering in her mind, Rachel pondered the intersection of loss and purpose that intertwined through each discovery. She had witnessed how a community could fracture, yet simultaneously, how it could unite. The memory of Amelia resonated within the town, an irreplaceable spirit whose essence fueled a movement of change and safety. While the conviction of Hargrove had quelled some fears, the void left by Amelia's absence still echoed throughout Graystone, a silent reminder that healing would take time. Staring out the window at the familiar landscape, Rachel felt the weight of her crusade settle in her heart. The truth would always matter, for it was Amelia's truth that would help shape a safer future. In grappling with her reflections, she found renewed determination to continue seeking every lead, to unravel the threads of the existing mysteries that still lingered. Graystone was her home, and finding justice for Amelia became a collective purpose threaded into the fabric of its resilience.